Hello everybody, I'm Lindsay Hewitt. I'm the Widening Participation Coordinator for the Open University in Scotland. And what I'm going to talk to you about just now is work in progress rather than research, but it's work in progress that's developed from something we did earlier. The first couple of slides are really to just set it in context of a climate that's already been raised by Colm and by Gail, that there is a receptive climate for doing something better for carers, whether that's young carers, including young adult carers, or carers per se. And there's opportunities, but there's also still challenges remaining there, within that climate of anticipation for something better. So, for instance, just to take a couple of points, in terms of good developments, there's the funding for College Development Network in Scotland, which is providing materials for staff development material for colleges to enlighten them in terms of the needs of carers and to point towards identifying carers. So that's something that's being warmly received and is actually something positive that's happening. But on the other hand, some of the challenges are that although there are some wonderful individual projects to support young adult carers, they're fragile in terms of funding. So that's something that needs to be looked at. But alongside the Children and Young People Scotland Bill, there's a consultancy document out at the moment. The deadline is the 21st of April, inviting feedback on the proposals that they're making within that. And there's a real opportunity there for institutions such as the OU to work with carers organisations in terms of, there's a focus on transitions, there's a focus on education. So there's areas in which carers organisations themselves are starting to think in educational terms for carers in a way that they perhaps haven't done so previously, where maybe it's been more about respite or information about health conditions and so on. And similarly, there's already been mentioned some of the areas where the OU is already thinking about making moves to doing things that will help support carers in terms of the flag to identify carers. We've got to listen. There's got to be some more research in terms of listening to what the needs of OU students are that are carers, and moving towards personalised support and alerting, just as Larry and Gail said, alerting carers to what is available to them. But also, there's also the point about recognition of the skills and abilities and qualities that carers have. And John mentioned resilience, and that's something that came out a lot in the work that we've been doing in preparation for this open educational resource. We've already been working on, and we have an open educational resource called the Reflection Toolkit, and we've used that in practice with carers in Dumfries and Galloway, and I'll come on to that in a minute. But the objective of the present project is to develop an open educational resource for carers, a self-reflective toolkit for carers that's been developed with carers and with organisations, national and local organisations that support carers, to help them thinking about where they are, thinking about what their skills, abilities and qualities, identifying their goals and thinking about what their next steps might be. And that's where we are at the moment. But the point is that it's not just about developing a resource and then saying, well, here you are, off you go. It's also about developing relationships and thinking about open educational practice, how you'll use it, the range of ways that you might use it differently in different contexts. There will be different types of communities geographically, but also in terms of young adult carers or people in inner city or so on and so forth. So it's working in partnership to think about how it might be used, helping the organisations do training for trainers around using it, exploring ways that it might be used on site, online rather, or offline, but also monitoring its use and tracking its outcomes and evaluating what we can learn from how it's being used and the impacts from it. So it's not just, well, the job done, here it is. It's very much a long-term commitment and a long-term collaborative commitment. And that, as Gail says, that takes time and trust. So I'll just start for a minute to say something that we've been doing with carers in Dumfries and Galloway. And this is just a comment from Leslie, who was one of the students. And she's saying, I think you definitely lose confidence. And this will be very, very familiar to anybody that's working, not just with carers, but it's a widening access statement too. I think you definitely lose confidence if you have to give up a career for whatever reason. You lose your sense of identity and worth. And being a carer can be isolating too. Not working has a huge impact financially. And as time goes on, your self-esteem can erode and you can start to feel that there are no opportunities available. But supported by our local carer centre and the local OU project worker, Leslie studied an OU openings module followed by a reflection course based on the reflection toolkit and supported locally by the local OU project worker and the centre. She completed that, and Leslie is registered on a part-time study for an undergraduate degree in business studies. And she says openings and reflection helps you realise your potential that gets lost in your caring role. So there was some of it, so it was uncovering the confidence that they actually didn't know they had, if that doesn't sound too strange a thing. And the next few slides will be familiar to people where I've presented slides on the reflection toolkit, but I know that there's some of you here that don't know anything about it. So this is just to say a little bit about what it is and why we've focused on reflection. Because reflection is just something that we all do, but it's something that is also used, informally in everyday life, but it's also something that's seen as valuable within working and educational contexts, and indeed within particularly our level 1 curriculum. Reflection is being built into the framework of the course. So there's something there that's of real value over and above in an informal way, just reflecting on what I've done and what I've learned from that. So to just give you a brief overview, the Reflection Toolkit really is an open educational resource for anyone. It's for people from diverse backgrounds and different circumstances, and it can be used for personal development or in terms of thinking about where I might want to go to next in terms of study or training or employment. And it's something that can be used on or offline, either on our own or in a facilitated context. And indeed, in the Dumfries example, the 3 carers that were involved there, they engaged with the Reflection Toolkit at home on their own. But the important thing is that they came together to discuss it and to have the peer support. And they did the same sort of thing with their openings course. They did their OU studies and they were all doing something different, but they had this peer support. They had an opportunity to come together and support each other in their learning. The Reflection Toolkit takes a case study approach, so it contains ideas about what reflection is and the value of reflection, but it also is based around the real experience of individuals. In this case, it was 6 Open University students, the original toolkit, from Orkney down to southwest Scotland in different contexts. And it contains a mixture of ideas about reflection and activities, reflective activities based on the case studies. And then the idea was that people had the opportunity to try out these ideas for themselves. So the toolkit really was a way of introducing people to the notion of reflection and how to do it, a sort of getting started on trying out reflection activities. And it was a 5-hour unit, and it was split into 5 sections, starting from where I am, thinking about yourself, what my present situation is, and then moving on to thinking about my life over time, and that could be a short period of time, quite specific areas like my recent work experience, or it could be over a longer period, and looking at the ups and downs, and with the view to introducing the notion that you can learn from negative as well as positive experiences, and you start to look, by plotting what happened here and there over a period, what you've learned from that experience. And then the next movement on from that is to think, well, what does that show about my skills and abilities and my decision making, and what I've had to contend with, and the reasons for doing things at different periods in my life. And then from that, there's a sense of going on to think about where I my direction of travel, really, identifying my goals, what I might want to do next, who might help me achieve them, who or what might help me, what information do I need, and what my first next step would be. So it's a journey then, but it's based on what you've learned from reflecting. The OER4Carers, as I said, is co-written by carers, some of them OU students, and the carers organisations that are helping us with this are Carers Trust Scotland, Scottish Young Carer Services Alliance, which is great to have on board because it touches on, they're obviously, it's what it says in the tin, it's focused on young carers and young adult carers, but it's not an organisation specific. So it links in with a wide range of organisations nationally that have projects and initiatives to support young carers and young adult carers. And Carers Link is the other one. Carers Link Scotland is the other one, as well as individual carer centres. And I've said the model of the resources, it mirrors the model of the other resource. But the two additional assets that we'll have in here is a badging facility that will be able to recognise the journey that individual people have made through the course, the reflection process, but also it'll have two additional, the original one was 5 units, this is going to have about 8 sections rather, and one will be learning paths. And the way that the learning paths are conceptualised is it's from the carers' perspective. It's what carers have said are their motivations for learning. And it might be, for instance, it's to find out more about particular health-related conditions. So it might be very specific information that they're looking for. Or it might be making maximum use of the skills and abilities and the knowledge that I've gained in my caring role. So their circumstances might have changed, or it may not, but it may be that they want to start looking at going into employment or studying to develop the sort of knowledge that they're gaining in that caring role. It might be to do with youth work, it might be to do with social work, or so on and so forth. For others, it's maybe circumstances change in a caring role, and it might be that, well, any of us can become a carer at any time. So something that you're doing, whether it's studying or a career or just any other thing that you're doing, volunteering, it might have to come to an abrupt halt. So for some carers, it's a matter of maybe preparing to take up from where I left off, to resume something that stopped several years ago. And you mentioned that point as well, in terms of education, whether somebody had done, a postgraduate degree or whatever. So there's that. And then for other people, the motivation is something for me, something that's not necessarily going, it's not a career planning here. We're talking, and one of the carers that we interviewed talked about a J.K. Rowling moment, and it's like an hour in a cafe for me time. And so for that, it's to give yourself, quite often it involves giving yourself permission to have that time. And so it's from that basis. Now, that's not to say it's just a series of one-off things. It might be that it's something for me that leads to developing an interest in taking it a little bit further. but really the motivating, the priority is having something for me. So that's the rationale of thinking and mapping out the learning paths, and we're using the same sort of idea that Ilaria and her team are doing, is looking at iTunes U, looking at what's in Open Learn, and plotting stepping stones from informal to formal learning into the pathways within the Open University in discipline. So rather than starting with discipline, we're ending up with discipline. And career areas or job areas. But the main criteria of developing this resource is to actually listen to the carers. And we interviewed 18 carers, and we haven't got all the pictures yet, but these are the pictures. These are the photographs of the 3 women that were involved in the Dumfries last year. Were involved with the original reflection toolkit last year. And listening to collaborate with the carers and the carers organisations. As I said, we interviewed about 18 to 20 carers. And from that, we've selected about 8 who will feature strongly within the toolkit, but there will be comments from some of the others within it. One of the things that's different about the way that we've approached this compared to the way that we approached in the final product of the original reflection toolkit was we had a range of case studies in the original one. As I said, very diverse, some people changing direction, somebody in the army went to the prison service and then swerved violently to the left or right to become a youth worker, a part-time youth worker. But it always looked as if they were done and dusted. There was a kind of neatness to it, that no matter who they were or where they started from or their journey, which could have been quite convoluted, it always looked like a success story. So when you went in a widening access context to a community to present this, people inevitably said, oh, my life's nothing like that. So rather than it being an inspiring story, it actually, for some people, it ended up crushing them. They think, oh, I left school, I had a rubbish experience at school, I've never had a job, I've been abused, all this kind of thing. And it's like, where do I start looking at my past life and my ups and downs when there doesn't seem to me to have been any ups? So, and from a pedagogical point of view as well, what we're doing with this one is we're taking it as almost like doing it live. The people that we're working with, the carers, the young carers and the older carers that we're working with, they're actually doing this in the process. So what you have here is the process of them working through the toolkit. So there's not an end. They're still thinking about what they might do next or their next step might be. And that makes it actually more of an organic and an exciting project, really. So people are looking at they're joining in and they're doing something like alongside someone else doing the same thing. So I think that's an interesting development in our approach to doing this kind of work. And it will be very interesting to evaluate if there's a difference in terms of how it's received. And this is some of the things that the carers have said while they've been doing it. Even interestingly enough, even the process of taking part in the interviews and participating in it has been really very useful for the carers. They'll maybe say, oh, I don't have much confidence, or I'm not very good at something, and the interviewer will say, and you did this and you did that, and they'll say, so I did, oh, I did that, didn't I? So it's like uncovering. So this is some of the sort of things that the experiences of that the carers have been revealing. Just thinking about it today, I kind of amazed myself. So they start to. So even just in the interview process, there's been really positive outcomes for the carers, and everybody's really, really keen on being involved. I mean, they're really keen, and so are all the organisations that we're working with. And what we find is that there's a large number of different roles, and that people are managing to get through things. you know, and they're being active, they're making use of transferable skills. They're doing this. And for the other thing is that the importance of, particularly I suppose with the young adult carers, although it is happening through social media, for instance, with some of the adult carers, but for the young adult carers in particular, the opportunity to have peer support and to get together and to be around people that are going through the same things or have been through the same things makes a huge difference. And I think that's a really important learning point for the OU in terms of how we're thinking about how we might support carers. And they're able to, what's coming across is that they're able to assess, to make risk assessments. You know, there's things that are going to have to changes of plan. So they'll look at, there's changes in financial circumstances, there's decisions that they're having to make and react upon on an ongoing basis. So there's resilience, and there's also displaying time and time again emotional intelligence, being able to assess people and assess circumstances and being empathetic to people. And if you think about that in terms of transferable skills, these are all really vital things that are useful to employers, you know, to looking down. So but it's just helping people to recognise that they have these attributes. What else are they saying? So yes, I've said that, managing risks, assessing and planning. So assessing what to do next, what might have to be dropped. Quite often they'll maybe have to drop out of a course at college. And so how it looks from the outside is different to actually what prompted it. I won't go down that road, but that's a big thing. So these were the original learning outcomes of the original reflection toolkit. But if you just have, I'm not going to read them out, but if you just glance down them, you can see how these will chime within the OER4Carers. But as I said, it's not just about providing a resource and saying to people, well, here you go. It is about open educational practice and how it might be used. As I said, carers support workers have already used the original reflection toolkit with carers and found it effective, and others are planning to use it. And what I have here is just some of the ways support workers have or are planning to use it, and as well as some of our own ideas for its use on and offline, and within particular, you know, for even staff or for people, individual case workers, to use it on a one-to-one basis with their clients or as a resource. I mean, I can give you an example. Renfrewshire Young Adult Carers, they take some of their clients to Outward Bound. They do an Outward Bound thing, and they want to link the reflection toolkit to what people have gained from that experience. So they kind of incorporate it. They incorporate reflection within the course, but this gives it a structure. So they're really keen to do that as far as taking it forward. So in terms of taking the OER will be launched on the 9th of June at a conference in Glasgow. And in terms of the next step, it is working with Carers Trust Scotland and Carers Trust UK in terms of taking this forward. There's an idea that it will be piloted in Scotland, but this is a generic resource. There's nothing in it to tie it to Scotland other than the accents. But, you know, and it's about how it might be used. So I've already had presentations to the Carers Trust Network Conference in Scotland, and where Carers Trust UK was represented. So there's conversations going on there as to how it might be used. And of course, part of that is how we get some money. Carers Link, which is a different organisation, they're using it on a one-to-one basis, and they're helping us with the learning paths. And and the Scottish Young Care Services Alliance. They're interested in seeing how they might take it with their European partners. And also I think there's more research to be done on OU students with caring responsibilities. In terms of recognising their skill, helping them to recognise their skills, abilities and qualities, in terms of how that might inform and the advice around. There's nowhere for people to go to get advice on education. You know, within college, we have a situation where in college people are told to go to their carers centre for advice. That, you know, so there's a situation like that. So there's things about progression, informal to formal learning and progression, pathways. There's a lot on the pathways. So anyway, that's where we are now.